It's the Tony Kinnett Cast on 93 WIPC.
Good evening. Welcome to the Tony Kinnett Cast. Although I hate to say it's not particularly a good evening. Forgive the formalities there. I am on with Jerry Lopez out of Indianapolis. This show was not supposed to happen. I was supposed to be in Colorado today, but after the events yesterday regarding Charlie Kirk's assassination, canceled that trip. So Jerry Lopez is on the line with me because there's too much breaking news to really just go this one alone. So Jerry, thank you for being willing to spend a little bit of your guest hosting time here breaking some of these stories that are coming out of Annapolis and others right now.
Hey, I appreciate being on with you. I do want to send my condolences to you. I know you and Charlie were pretty close. I know he kind of stepped in with you when you dealt with your issue with the Indianapolis public school system. So my thoughts and prayers with him and his family, and to those of people like you that were close to him.
Thank you. Out of the Naval Academy in Annapolis, we are currently informed, based on a series of posts from various news outlets and organizations, confirmed that the United States Naval Academy in Annapolis is currently on lockdown. This is according to Fox News, after a midshipman, the naval version of a cadet, who had been kicked out of the school, has returned to campus armed with a weapon. Multiple sources inside of the Naval Academy tell Lucas Tomlinson. Gunshots have been heard inside Bancroft Hall, which houses the midshipman. Right now, according to an open source intelligence monitor, one medevac is currently flying, a 19-year-old male with a wound that I'm not going to elaborate on, to a nearby hospital. That means he's in critical condition. There are currently 3 reported casualties. That is according to a couple of sources that I trust. In the event that that's different, we'll make sure to issue that correction. So that's all the information we have right now. Jerry, this is not the first school or the first shooting at a school this week, right?
No, we actually had one yesterday in Evergreen High School. So this is about 30 miles southwest of, I believe, of Denver.
In Colorado.
A student showed up yesterday around lunchtime with a handgun revolver, shot a couple students, and then in the end turned the gun on himself. The gunman died. The other 2 people survived. One is in critical condition. But that marks the 47th school shooting this year. That one happened at lunchtime yesterday.
There is a horrifying series of violent outbreaks in this country at this present time. We'll get into that in a minute. We do have a little bit more on the news that we have to continue pressing through because I only have the full radio audience for this first FCC segment. Right now, Radslaw Sikorsky, and I'm sorry, I'm definitely pronouncing that name incorrectly. Producer Nick, this is the Deputy Prime Minister of Poland.
He serves as both Poland's Deputy Prime Minister and Foreign Minister.
The Deputy Prime Minister and Foreign Minister. So he's under Polish Prime Minister Donald Tusk. He has stated after President Trump of the United States was asked on Thursday about the violation of Polish airspace by Russian drones. So not yesterday evening, but the prior evening, the Russian Federation had sent in at least 3 of its attack drones into Polish airspace, where combined NATO aircraft were able to take down those 3 drones. There's very little that we know about that, but the Deputy Prime Minister of Poland, Radosław Sikorski, has now said, no, that wasn't a mistake regarding the the drones that flew into Russian territory. Jerry, looking at the situation unfolding in the Middle East right now, it's a pretty bad time for picking a fight with Poland, given the kind of nationalist streak that's currently running through that country.
100%. But I think what people really need to pay attention to is Poland's a NATO country, right? So when it comes to NATO, Article 5 says an attack on one is an attack on all. And this is where the United States can get drug into this conflict. It's the reason we did not give Ukraine part of NATO when the first incursion with Russia happened, because we didn't want to be drugged into the war immediately. So if this actually is an attack on Poland and falls under Article 5, the U.S. will be forced to go in and support, and that's the part we need to pay attention to.
Yes, and I'm being told that I misspoke. Polish territory. The Russian drones entered Polish territory in the southwest. The southeast. I apologize. So right now, what we're looking at appears to be rising tensions in Eastern Europe from the drones which were fired by Russia and then entered Polish airspace and were then shot down by NATO forces. This isn't the first time that the Russian Federation has flown some things nearby other airspaces. There were military training operations which were previously scheduled with Belarus close to the Polish border, yet the Polish airspace was closed for a couple of hours on the eastern half of the country due to what they had described in kind of their alerts to the airports as unplanned military activity. Jerry, right now, I know that you're going to be taking the Indianapolis audience through this in just a bit here. The officials in the United States are focused entirely on the Charlie Kirk assassination and kind of their response to it. I know it's involved some reframing, some deflecting. Could I get a couple of your quick thoughts here before we do lose you to the FCC radio timer?
Yeah, definitely. So my thought is this one hits a little bit different for me, Tony. I mean, I don't condone assassinations of any type on anybody, regardless of political party. Unfortunately, our country has been accustomed to assassinations of politicians, unfortunately. We've had two attempts with Donald Trump, and we've kind of forgot about those, okay? This is a guy who is doing the same thing that you're doing right now, the same thing that I'm doing right now, just speaking his thoughts, opening to debate in the most respectful way. And he was killed for that. Mm-hmm. And that should be very jarring to all of us. He was legitimately killed for exercising his First Amendment right. He didn't make policy. He doesn't create law. What he did was he scared the left because he was infusing a younger generation of college students to actually dissect and figure out the truth. And that's terrifying.
We're going to pick through. I've been doing a lot of tracking kind of how Generation Z, the very last of the millennials, Generation I Alpha behind Generation Z, has been reacting, of course, to Charlie Kirk's brutal assassination, as well as the reaction of those who have taken this as an opportunity to be truly inhuman. And we're going to be talking with Wade Stotts a little bit later about why this is such an important thing to keep an eye on, because right now a lot of the clips are from some of the older members of the Democrat Party, both officials in Congress, governors and state policyholders from around the country, and media individuals. But I don't think that's really where the focus needs to be, because the future of the United States rests a lot on how those under the age of 35 are reacting to serious political and crime events. Jer?
I mean, you couldn't be more right when it comes to that. We're desensitized. And listen, we've had everybody from lawmakers to restaurant owners to just regular people praising the death of Charlie Kirk. And it doesn't get much more worse than that. This guy was a man, 31 years old, had two young kids, and by all accounts was open to an honest debate, right? So I'm tired of hearing we need to keep having a conversation because they just assassinated the guy that literally was going around trying to do that.
So right now, a bit of an update on the situation at Annapolis. Again, there is currently an active situation in which the United States Naval Academy in Annapolis is locked down due to an active shooter on the scene. We believe at the moment there are 3 casualties. At least one individual has been medevaced. 2 Maryland State Police medevac helicopters have just landed at the U.S. Naval Academy. Right now, the Maryland governor, that would be Wes Moore, says there is no active threat at this time. Jerry, we have to leave the radio crew. We know you're going to do a great job hosting the show there. This is the Tony Kinnett Cast here on the Daily Signal. We're going to continue on the live stream and send the radio crew to commercial. Radio side, you guys, take care. All right, go ahead and cut it. Thanks very much. All right, to continue on the live stream, let's dig into a little bit more of the quick news side of things this evening. I apologize for the rather strange makeup of the show. We weren't planning on doing something today. I had a trip to Colorado with a couple of other conservative speakers and folks kind of in the influencer circuit. Ended up calling that trip off yesterday. So moving forward from the quick news to the media landscape of the United States, right now in this country, there appear to be three core groups on the side that are not reacting like humans. And I do want to make this clear. Right now, at this present time, there is not yet a suspect in custody for the assassination of Charlie Kirk at the university in Utah at which he was shot. There have been individuals which were arrested, which were questioned. And while one is still being held on obstruction charges, right now there is an individual whom the FBI has released as a person of interest. There's additional security footages that are being released. Right now there is still a major manhunt underway. And that is a very, very dangerous thing for this country, not only because that is an armed and dangerous murderer who is running around the country still free, but because the longer that this individual is breathing, this will be a person who will be lionized by the exact same group of people who lionized Luigi Mangione after murdering the CEO of United Healthcare, a healthcare organization to which Luigi Mangione didn't even get healthcare coverage from. And now there is an individual, just like the Minneapolis shooter, the Nashville shooter, who in this case right now in Utah is still on the loose. It is a very, very scary thing when there are individuals who are committing gross acts of assassination, terrorism, and murder, openly, wantonly so, that are being lionized by huge swaths of the country. And if they're not being lionized, then they are being excused for, or completely different people are being framed as the true culprits for this entire situation. So we're going to talk a little bit specifically about some of the individuals who have made up the worst actors. And you, as an American, or someone else around the world tuning in, you need to be very well aware of what people out there are saying. Because here in a couple of weeks, well, even already so, we're seeing people make posts that say, well, there's only a fringe couple of people here and there that are saying anything. Really, the majority of everyone has been really nice and wonderful, and they've shared such warm, heartfelt whatevers. It is a lie. It is a lie. When a columnist from the Washington Post tells you that right now there's all of these people that are they're trying to say all of the left is responding this way. Actually, the most people have been really nice and pleasant and kind. That is not, in fact, the case. It is just not true. There is one other update that I do need to point out. Sorry, I didn't have this in the notes, but it is in one of the bookmarked points that I should have made. Right now, according to several reports, actually, I believe it was Steven Crowder who initially pushed out this email from the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms. Ammunition discovered along with a foreign Mauser rifle, which was wrapped up in a towel in a wooded site near the university, discovered by federal forces. The ammunition found in the Mauser and around it was engraved with transgender and anti-fascist ideology. Anti-fascist does not just mean you're against fascism. Antifa, the anti-fascist movement, is the anti-Western, anti-United States, anti-American, anti-European, anti-capitalist, anti-free market, anti-Christian movement, which seeks for the complete revolution in a Marxian fashion. And that's not me saying that. That is Antifa who says that clearly. Yes, Producer Nick.
A bit of a clarification on the ammunition. The cartridge that was shot at Charlie was still inside the rifle as well as the other ones, but there were engraved casings themselves, those words such as transgender and anti-fascist.
Absolutely. So in the situation regarding how these events are now unfolding, yesterday, as you will recall, there were a series of reporters that ran out immediately, especially like over on Katie Tur's show on MSNBC, who said, well, we don't know anything about anything at all, and we're not going to make any kind of whatever because, well, it could have been a celebratory shot that was fired into the air, which is an absolutely stupid take. That is a brain-dead, retarded take. Anyone who says that to you is an idiot. Anyone who says, we have no idea what the possible motives of the shooter, we knew it was this from the very first second that Charlie Kirk was hit. Everyone knew it. Anyone who tells you they didn't know it is lying to you. And still, the media persists. You have outlets like Wired, which released right-wing activists are targeting people for allegedly celebrating Charlie Kirk's death. There's no allegedly here. And we're going to go through the individuals on the left side of the aisle who have either been complete subhuman, filthy garbage, or who have deflected away from being honest about this particular political assassination, or reframed it and just shoved it away in a totally different fashion. So first of all, the group who deflects away. These are the individuals who somewhat right out of the bat have made the case that, well, we're not actually going to look at, things that might have led to the shoot. We're just going to say everyone needs to calm down. What we need to do is stand together and not point any fingers. This is Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer being a feckless coward.
Can we get your reaction to President Trump blaming the radical left for what happened to Charlie Kirk yesterday?
For those who couldn't hear her, because that audio is a little low, she said, what do you think about President Trump blaming the radical left for the assassination of Charlie Kirk? I will remind you that on the cartridges, transgender and Antifa stuff, by the way, which CNN described as cultural symbols and terms, yes, that's honest reporting, that on those cartridges was written, oh man, the radical left, yes, that would be the radical left. Absolute, that by textbook definition. So that's the question she asked. What do you think about that? Here's Schumer's response.
Well, look, the bottom line is this is a time that all Americans should come together and feel and mourn what happened. Violence, which affects so many different people of so many different political persuasions, is an affliction of America. And coming together is what we ought to be doing.
Before Hakeem Jeffries gets up there, I want to make this really clear. The last several instances of abhorrent violence, both of the political nature, of the cultural nature, like mass shootings, Schumer does not get up there and say this. He does not. He doesn't. The last time Schumer said something like this was when Steve Scalise was shot at the congressional baseball game. Here's Hakeem Jeffries.
Not pointing fingers of blame.
This moment requires leadership that brings the American people together as opposed to trying to further divide us. Political violence in any form against any American is unacceptable, should be denounced by everyone, and moving forward, we have to figure out a better way to come together.
Okay, this is from the same individual who demonizes half the country regularly. So we need leadership who's going to come and not further divide the country. I'm making it very clear that during the president's speech, he said verbatim that the radical left was responsible. He didn't just say Democrats in general. Biden, during his campaign, accused Republicans in general of being horrible, evil, terrible people when he was flanked by Marines in front of Independence Hall in Philadelphia. But Hakeem Jeffries, he's here to let us know, well, really, you need leadership. You can't really divide anyone right now. I'm just to be very clear, the manifesto of the Nashville shooter, the manifesto of the Minneapolis shooter, Luigi Mangione, in his assassination of the United Healthcare CEO, and now here in the Charlie Kirk evidence that we have so far in the assassination of Charlie Kirk, have been very clearly politically motivated by the radical left overtly. Not kinda, not sort of, overtly. Mehdi Hassan then interviewed Ilhan Omar. You already knew where this was going because Ilhan Omar is known for being the individual who, when describing 9/11, said some people did something. when describing the Islamic terror attack against the people of the United States. So here's Ilhan Omar completely deflecting on this issue.
What I do know for sure is that, Charlie was someone who once said, guns save lives after a school shooting. Charlie was someone who was willing to debate and downplay the death of George Floyd in the hands of Minneapolis police.
I think he called him a scumbag.
Right, have no regard, downplay.
Okay, first of all, there are several mass shootings in the last couple of months which were avoided because an individual in the area had a firearm and stopped the mass shooter before they could kill people, or severely limited the number of people that were killed in a mass shooting. Yes, guns in the hands of responsible citizens do save lives. That is an objective reality. That is a fact. The majority of mass shootings are not committed with legally purchased firearms. They are already committing flagrant felonies from state and federal level felonies when they commit the mass murders. And they are stopped by individuals with firearms. They've been stopped by individuals without firearms. They've been stopped by individuals with knives. As far as George Floyd is concerned, the man who beat pregnant women on fentanyl, yeah, I mean, the individual in his life, yes, was absolutely a scumbag. And Derek Chauvin, for following Minneapolis policy for police officers, in which they explicitly stated what they are supposed to do, that when Derek Chauvin showed up on the scene, Floyd already on the ground experiencing a fentanyl overdose, was saying he couldn't breathe long before Chauvin attempted to restrain Floyd, who then started to flail about wildly and throw punches and threaten people in the area. Yeah, I'm sorry. So far, none of that is comparable to Charlie Kirk, who debated people on campus and was shot for holding those views that people should debate ideas at places like universities where ideas are supposed to be debated.
Slavery and what Black people have gone through in this country by saying Juneteenth should never exist.
That's not what he said verbatim. He said that Juneteenth, as a political weapon, should not be a federal holiday in order to beat part of the country over alleged white supremacy claims. Talking points without actually looking up the data are worthless, but it is in fact what Ilhan Omar has built her entire career around. And
I think, there are a lot of people who are out there talking about him just wanting to have a civil debate.
Complete rewriting of history.
Notice how they don't play any clips of Charlie Kirk during this entire thing? You notice that? None of these clips where they go on these rants about, everyone who says Charlie Kirk, actually, he was really terrible. They never play any videos of Charlie Kirk. What you're seeing right now are a couple of quotes taken wildly out of context and then pasted on social media to say, there you go, this is why he deserved it. Never see any video clips. In fact, when you go, so I'm going to tell you from a conservative perspective. An individual who recently contacted me because, yes, I did have the honor of being a friend of Charlie Kirk's, that when this individual contacted me, they said they really didn't know much about Charlie until he was assassinated. And they have spent the last day looking up his old videos. And their original perspective of him was just that he was often memed and, which he enjoyed, by the way, the face shrinking memes that would often be put out, the fake Turning Point USA and PragerU memes. He thought they were hilarious. He was the person laughing the hardest when South Park did the recent episode where they called him a master debater. He thought that was funny. But they said my only exposure previously was those memes. And so I thought he was going to be this goofy, dorky idiot, and found him to be incredibly articulate and very compassionate when he spoke to people. And that is true. Charlie Kirk was a far more generous, congenial, pleasant, and compassionate individual than I will ever hope to be. You never see any of these individuals say that. Then you have the people who are heartless in how they deflect. One of these would be Hassan. Hassan Abbey, I believe, is the name, right? He's done a couple of events with Charlie Kirk. You've seen some of this stuff before. Tell us a little bit about this guy and the work that he's done, producer Nick. I need some context here.
Hassan Abi is primarily a streamer. He got into politics as he became a bit more radicalized. He's related to Chunk Yeager of the Young Turks. As he developed his political career, becoming a bit more famous, he started calling out quite a few pundits on the right, specifically Charlie Kirk, in a few direct debates that they had in the past, and actually had some plans for the future that happened.
So, as far as the situation regarding Hassan Abi today, on his stream, I believe yesterday evening, he was playing some footage, and Alex Jones, controversial guy on the right, and I say controversial, by the way, because there are people on the right in this space, my space, who argue about the things that he says constantly. And Alex Jones was a friend of Charlie Kirk's. And shockingly, Alex Jones is crying over his friend dying. I have cried over Charlie Kirk being killed. There are a lot of us, a lot of you, who have cried at this news. And for the grand crime of crying over the death of his friend and giving a little bit of honor and homage to Charlie, again, who was shot in the neck at a university. This is what the man who worked and did some events with him, Hassan Abi, this is where he decided to take this.
Think about these bastards. The corporate media covers everything up. They love it.
I don't. These conservatives really think they're a targeted group. I mean, that's a big part of their worldview, right? Permanent perceived victimhood. That's it.
Of death, they just scum. We're gonna get them. We're gonna save this country and the world together. Because people like Charlie Kirk's courage. We love you, Charlie. God bless you.
Fascists love claiming to be permanently in a state of victimhood by simultaneously weak and also all-powerful individuals.
He was shot. He was shot. It's inhuman. It's inhuman. He had an event scheduled with Charlie Kirk. It is the lowest form of the low. And then he does what all narcissist fools do and makes it about himself. So then he makes this all about how actually the real person being targeted is Hassan.
Practice genuine terrorism on a daily.
Dude, he's such a pussy. Just say you want me to be fucking killed, okay? What is this? What is this wishy-washy like, oh, the left gets to do terrorism and the...
So, go ahead, producer Nick.
May I expound upon this? The idea that the left is able to do terrorism. Across these clips, whether it's officials or pundits like yourself, you have these people continuously label people like Charlie as white supremacists, as Nazis, as Hitler lovers, as these things. They say that. They say white supremacist, claim that time and time again, because it seems inconspicuous. It seems like name throwing. But then you have the last president quote from one of his speeches, white supremacy is the single most dangerous terrorist threat in our homeland. You have these people speak this rhetoric, and then these same people turn around and tell us to come together, to make amends, that it's Donald Trump's fault, that political violence has become commonplace, and that he, as a leader, needs to bring the country together.
To see individuals like Representative Maxine Waters of California during the last election say that if Republicans won, then they were going to have all of these terrorists from up in the hills come down and get everyone. That they were out training in the camps to come out and shoot Democrats. The number of Democrat officials, the number of Democrats in media, old and new, because Hassan is in the new media for the left. Streamer, legacy anchor, what have you. And by the way, of all of the individuals in the coverage that we're talking about tonight, that was the less insane option of the other two groups here. So those are the individuals who are deflecting. Then we have individuals who are in the middle of this assassination coverage, of the manhunt for the killer, of the discovery of additional evidence which proves beyond a shadow of a doubt this was a deeply political assassination, which again, everyone already knew to begin with. You have individuals who are completely reframing it from the start. We played this yesterday, but Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker made this the cornerstone of what would become the reframed argument from those just trying to reframe everything away and say, well, I mean, yeah, maybe it might have been political, but actually it's all the right's fault to begin with.
My sympathy to Charlie Kirk's family and to Charlie Kirk, who obviously has, become a target for somebody. I don't know whether it's political violence because I don't know who did it. I know they seem to have somebody in custody. But I will say that political violence, unfortunately, has been ratcheting up in this country. We saw the shootings, the killings in Minnesota. We've seen other political violence occur in other states. And I would just say it's got to stop. And I think there are people who are fomenting it in this country. I think the president's rhetoric often foments it. We've seen the January 6th rioters who clearly, have tripped a new era of political violence.
So the case that Pritzker makes, he ignores all of the left-wing violence. He then suggests that he mentions the Minnesota shootings. He's trying to group the horrible terrorist transgender shooting of the Ascension Catholic School with the targeted political assassination of Minnesota state-level lawmakers. And the narrative that the Democrats have been running as hard as they can for today on a large swath of the political left is that the individual who killed the two Democrat lawmakers was some like hyper right-winger. And the entire source for that is his neighbor told us. Again, according to multiple political records, there is no evidence that suggests the individual who killed the Minnesota state lawmakers was an aggressive right-winger. He was appointed by Governor Walz to a position. But yet this is being used as somehow the rhetoric. And let me explain how this is going to go. What you have is a couple of instances in the last decade in which someone on the right, again, who most individuals on the right would not even allow to be in the same room that they are. There are a couple of cases of political violence that is in fact committed by someone claiming to be on the right. So imagine 4 or 5 tally marks in one category, if you will. On the other side are 30 or 40 tally marks committed by individuals who Democrats refuse to ostracize from the party, who are openly holding the severed head of the President of the United States in wax form up and are still invited to speak at Democrat events, who openly hope for, wish for people dead on stage, and are still invited to political events, who the DNC under Ken Martin refuses to ostracize, refuses to condemn. In fact, you have their own reporters running around praising them, covering for them openly. And when you ask them, well, man, what is all of this about? They immediately get into the political rhetoric. So you have people like Representative Jamie Raskin of Maryland running forward to say, oh, it's the guns that did it. It's just gun violence.
To tone down the rhetoric after what happened with Charlie Kirk.
I mean, it's a horror what's going on, and the gun violence is out of control. And my heart goes out to Charlie Kirk's family. What a nightmare this whole thing is. And we saw it recently in Minnesota with elected officials being targeted, and it's just out of control across the country. And so,
it's just like random gun violence. Oh man, again, when there are individuals who are targeted specifically via assassination attempts, or I believe there was an assassination attempt planned that was thwarted on the President of the United States this evening at Yankee Stadium.
The Secret Service received a credible threat against the president's life at the Yankee event for 9/11.
It is despicable. It is despicable for me to just come up and say, oh, it's just, this is really just some kind of a general broad issue, and not address those in your own party that are calling for this, that are cheering for this. Former MSNBC legal analyst Glenn Kirshner told Jim Acosta today that, well, we can't ratchet down the rhetoric in this country. We can't, stop hating people because Donald Trump has the National Guard in D.C. That's the reason why.
I fear that where we are is, if not at a boiling point, we are, at this simmering stage where it feels like people are maybe so desperate, so anxious, so despondent at the circumstances that political violence is going to become a viable, possibility for them to sort of deal with their frustration, their anxiety, and their despair. And we all have to find a way to cool it down and ratchet that back, which is hard to do when you have the streets of Washington, D.C. militarized. What signal is the administration sending?
National Guard. I was just in Washington, D.C. I just flew home yesterday. I saw the National Guard, a bunch of friendly young dudes in mustaches waving at people outside Union Station. Where are all of these big by the way, supposedly the National Guard was sweeping in to take control, and then the Democrat Mayor Muriel Bowser asked for them to stay longer. Crime plummeted because people aren't willing to commit crimes in front of National Guardsmen. Oh, what message is that sending? Yes, let's ask the citizens of Washington, D.C., who actually live in rougher neighborhoods, what they think. Oh, wait, they're actually quite a fan of not having carjackings outside their house? That's supposed to be the thing that's keeping the political temperature from going down? Not, Tim Walz getting up there and saying that they're going to fight and, he's hoping people die, and you have other Democrats from around the country saying the exact same kind of rhetoric openly and getting cheered for it because it's some kind of grand gesture at fighting back against the Trump administration. Matthew Dowd, who is now fired, by the way, yesterday there was a little bit of confusion. We weren't sure if he had made this statement after Charlie Kirk had been announced dead or before, when Charlie Kirk was still fighting for his life in the hospital. We had landed on that it must have been after he was dead because that made sense, because Dowd said that he deserved it. And we're going to get to that clip in a second. Now we find out that he wasn't aware of it. So we're just going to make that correction. He wasn't aware of it yet, or the news hadn't been announced yet. Again, just to be very transparent, here's Matthew Dowd saying, well, Charlie was a very bad guy, so we had a comment.
Then lead to hateful actions. And I think that's the environment we're in, that people you can't stop with these sort of awful thoughts you have and then saying these awful words and not expect awful actions to take place.
Matt. Her skirt was so high. She was showing her butt cheeks. She wanted to be raped. After all, if she didn't want to be raped, she wouldn't be wearing a short skirt, officer. Man, if you wear a short skirt and a tight shirt, well, then, things happen. Anyhow, he's fired. Enjoy the unemployment line. I let my emotions get a little close to the sleeve there. Producer Nick.
These people in these clips are suggesting a comparison and contrast between the left and the right, and that the right is somehow coming out more violent. Let's compare ourselves a little bit. They're saying that the National Guard being in D.C. is violent. But what they don't reference, in contrast, is that the leftists would rather have Chaz Chop in Seattle, where people were actively murdered, no aid was able to get in from emergency services because they were blocked, and people were starved. Citizens were starved because of them living in the lockdown zone.
Moving forward here, other of the reframers here. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, our George Caldwell today, got a clip of this. More of the reframing argument, the same stuff.
Congresswoman, there's a lot of...
Specifically, Republicans are saying that Democrats too often have referred to them as Nazis, dictators. Is that the kind of rhetoric that you think there should be less of, or do you think that criticism is misplaced?
I believe that if we want to stop the scourge of violence in this country, we must do our jobs and...
Oh, we got to do our jobs. Oh!
Pass common sense gun safety reforms.
Gun safety reforms. Yes. Because a couple more laws on guns is totally going to fix it. That's why Chicago is the safest city in the country. Again, and though Mayor Brandon Johnson and other Democrats will get up and say, well, all of the guns are coming in from Indiana, I will remind you that fewer than 1/3 of the firearms that are confiscated in the city of Chicago come from Indiana. And of those, the majority of those guns confiscated from Indiana, again, less than 1/3 of the firearms confiscated in the city of Chicago, of those that are confiscated, the vast majority of those were illegally obtained in the first place because criminals don't follow gun laws. Oh, a couple more laws ought to fix it. No, but while you're continuing to suggest that the right is trying to erase trans people, is trying to put black people back in chains, is trying to round up brown people and ship them out of the country because they're brown. The absolute insanity that is on display here. And the worst of this particular category comes from CBS Mornings host Nate Burleson, who said that the people who really need to take a good hard look at themselves after this, it's Republicans.
And as Tony mentioned, not everyone took to his words or his rhetoric. At times they were offensive to specific communities. But with that said, this is not the time to focus on that. We are focused on this tragedy. Speaking of this tragedy, is this a moment for your party to reflect on political violence? Is it a moment for us to think about the responsibility of our political leaders and their voices and what it does to the masses as they get lost in misinformation or disinformation that turns in and spills into political violence?
I say both parties.
You mean like misinformation, like don't say gay, where people suggested everywhere that Florida was banning using the word gay in classrooms everywhere and was banning gay people from teaching? That misinformation? What about the one where Trump called veterans a bunch of suckers and losers? What about that one? Oh man, if we want to get into this conversation, buddy, we got a lot.
I
don't even say parties. I say a nation.
Okay.
And if there's a moment in time we want to look to, and I looked back and I watched this again when Robert F. Kennedy is running and he's in Indianapolis.
This is former Speaker of the House Kevin McCarthy.
And he just got the news that Martin Luther King was killed. And he has to tell the crowd because we don't have social media at that time. And it was remarkable the words he said. He said, we have to ask as a nation, who are we? And how do we want to move forward? We have watched this political attack on both sides. We watched what happened in Minnesota. We watched what happened to President Trump. We've watched this on both sides.
The both sides isn't incorrect here. It ain't. The idea, both sides are equally bad. Again, I point to the board in which there are a small handful of political targeted violent events. I'll remind you, by the way, that when Donnie O'Sullivan did his little mini documentary about political violence and he had to mention instances of right-wing political violence, he had to reach back to the 70s and the 80s to find events. Left-wing political violence, every time we do one of these types of things, I ask producer Nick to write down a list. It's a brand new set of 5 or 10 incidents because there are so many of them that keep happening that the lists, it knocks the other most recent events off in a couple of weeks.
A counter to the both sides as well. When you suggest both sides, look at the response of the left to this. They try and justify. They count off his political sins. When someone on the left is killed, such as Hortman, as many are suggesting, the immediate response on the right is, that's tragic.
Yeah,
Pray
my
for
response
them.
was take this person and hang him.
The response is a seeking for justice.
Yes.
The left doesn't want justice after situations such as this.
I mean, are you
both
suggesting there's
sides.
an individual who committed an atrocious crime and then they there's a comedian that went around praising the guy and he's Bill Burr and oh wait, that's Luigi Angione that's right now. Taylor Lorenz, the former Washington Post columnist who's obsessed and in love with the murderer.
A stand-up comedian made fun of the shooting this time around as well.
We don't have that clip this evening. We'll have to put that in for a future show. Unfortunately, there are truly so many instances of inhuman filth that we don't have the time to go over all of them. Not that that's necessarily good. Then there's a third category of people that we are referencing now. These are people who are just evil. They are evil. There was nothing redeemable about these people. One of these individuals is one of the most popular streamers on the left. He goes by Destiny. His real name is Stephen Kenneth Bono II. I can understand why he wouldn't want to go by that name on the stream. This is an individual who has previously invited me on his show to debate. He is an interesting individual who has said some truly atrocious things. He's just coming right out and just celebrating and making jokes about Charlie Kirk being assassinated. Here's the first.
One shot. Yep.
All right. What do you think conservative response to this will be? It's going to be the exact same response that it always is. It's going to be blaming the left. It's going to be a call for more aggressive rhetoric towards the left. It's going to be a call for the left to condemn or disavow whatever the anybody on the left that does any sort of disavowal, whatever bullshit, I think is cucked and weak. I saw Newsom doing it earlier.
Okay, so again, he says that he better not see anyone, actually go out there and offer condolences to Charlie's wife, Erica, and his 2 children. No condolences. If they do, then they're a cuck and they're weak. By the way, just for those who aren't up and hip on the lingo, a cuck is someone whose wife is stooping another man in front of them, which is, interestingly enough, something you can very much apply to Destiny, because Destiny's wife, ex-wife now, was stooping other dudes in front of him so that he had to go out and defend his wife being a total whore. And then he tried to make it better, saying, oh, we have an open marriage. And so then he went out and slept with a bunch of men, which is a weird way to get back at your wife. Oh, yeah, you're having sex with men? I'm going to have sex with men, too. Okay, yeah, that'll show her.
And more.
And more. Just whatever. So then she divorced him and took half of everything he had. So a hearty womp womp to you. I do enjoy when someone calls someone a cuck who's literally experienced the very thing they are accusing others of. Just chef's kiss moment there. And then, he said, well, what really, make T-shirts about the assassination or whatever.
Heavily congested with foot traffic and vehicle traffic.
God, it would be so horrible if for like a final fundraiser, Turning Point could sell, I went to Charlie Kirk's last event and survived shirts or whatever. I'm just kidding. That would be horrible. That's not good.
Wait, why would he come out and say, oh, that's horrible, don't do that? Wait, either commit or don't commit. Pretending that you have any kind of moral scruples whatsoever. It's ridiculous. It is ridiculous. And by the way, I can tell you the difference here at this moment. Right now, the entirety of Blue Sky, the app, and we're going to be talking about this with Wade here in just a moment. Wade Stotts from The Wade Show with Wade. We've talked a lot on the show before. What the youths are doing, what those in kind of the Gen Z class are currently up to on Blue Sky is the most reprehensible filth that I think I've ever seen. It's truly deeply wicked. And there is one of these examples I do want to show because you need to see it.
I saw the video of it. His last words were gun violence. I'll just say I think it's very fitting. I wish for him the same exact thing he said, oh well, about those kids being shot in schools.
He didn't say that, by the way.
As long as we have the Second Amendment.
Again, you will notice a common occurrence in all of the quoting of Charlie Kirk. They never show the video. They never show the full video of what he's saying. They never actually explain how Charlie says we should do everything we can. We should put police officers in schools. We should, in some cases, we should arm teachers who are willing. But the occurrence of an event is not in and of itself enough to overturn the rights of individuals. But no, just clipping a post and say, well, Charlie actually really hated black people and he loved school shootings and all this other nonsense is consistently a showcase not only of the inherent stupidity of such a movement, but also the future of a movement that is clinging to a violent revolution as hard as they can. And for this, we're, of course, going to talk to Wade. We've got Wade Stotts from The Wade Show with Wade on with us again. And you're one of the guys who has been doing the work of drudging through all of the muck that kind of the younger generations in their response, not just to, of course, the assassination of our friend Charlie Kirk, but also the reaction to the stabbing in Charlotte the other violent events over the last couple of months, this wave. And I've got a hunch you and I are probably thinking along the same lines, but I'd love to hear it. You are focusing a lot more on the response from the youth than perhaps the rest of the political structure is in this country. Why?
Well, those are the people that saw Charlie every day on TikTok. Those are the people who couldn't get away from him. And so the way that I see it breaking down, I mean, the right-wing people who see it and were fans of Charlie's they're mourning, they're doing all this sort of stuff because, and why? It's obviously they feel the anger. Where does that come from? And I think that those people feel the anger because Charlie, there's been a lot of discussion about, okay, Charlie is the kind of guy who would go to a college campus, talk to the people who didn't want to talk to him or would yell at him and be treated disrespectfully in that kind of environment. He was okay. He was courageous to go into that environment. But there's also the flip side of that, which is the people who watched him, who enjoyed him, who didn't have their minds changed necessarily, but were encouraged by him and emboldened by him. Right. And so he was a guy who made a lot of people not feel alone. And in basically my entire adult life, I'm sure it was that way before, but people who were conservatives, people who were Christians, people who thought the things that Charlie Kirk thought were afraid to share those things publicly. There was some sense of social shame that kept people from even voicing those kinds of opinions. And Charlie was a guy, he would go to these college campuses. All of us watched several of his clips after this, after his passing. But just he would be one of the only guys to tell them, hey, a lot of people here had their prom canceled because of COVID, had their graduation canceled because of COVID. They're in a bad way. And he saw his mission as being a way of channeling the anger that those people felt already at the way that they had been treated, channeling that into action that's positive and is trying to rebuild the country that he loves and that he wanted to instill a love in them. And so when people see that figure who has been one of the main people channeling the anger of young conservative Christian right wing, whatever label you want to call it, channeling that anger into a productive way, when they see that guy died, that's devastating to those people, and understandably so. And then on the other side, these are the people who basically I see the left as having to they're trying to preserve something. They're trying to preserve the revolution that has been happening in America since, you could call it, the 60s, right? So and so they want to hold on as tightly as they can to that to the results of that revolution. And Charlie was a winsome, exciting, young, articulate, knowledgeable voice pushing in the other direction and winning. And so I don't see this as the kind of it's not the kind of revolution that the left had in the past, where it was revolting against a sort of conservative establishment or long running establishment, but trying to, again, hold on to the fruits of the revolution, and seeing Charlie Kirk, seeing Donald Trump as being the chief opponents, the chief successful opponents of that. They see it slipping away, and all of the other avenues have been exhausted except for this. And it's tragic, it's evil. And I think that a lot of people who are following this can see that now in a way that maybe they can say out loud now that the left is a violent force, is a terroristic force, a force that hates America and doesn't want America to be successful and good. Those are things that a lot of people weren't okay with saying before. I think people can say that now, and I think that we hopefully are going to be able to act to prevent that force, that evil, murderous force, from having power in America again.
I'm sorry, I'm just thinking over some of the last couple of sentences, that the desperation to cling to any kind of a revolution comes from a lack of purpose to move forward to any specific thing. Mm-hmm. Because when you have a purpose, which you and I both understand, is something that you are God given. This is something that you in life have tasks. You know, we're called to be men, we're called to be husbands, we're called to be fathers, we're called to be active in our communities, to build something greater. It's that Abrahamic dream of go into a country that I will show you. It is the spirit of what manifest destiny is, not what the angry, pearl-clutching single women paint in pictures, but the actual genuine spirit of American pioneering. It's that purpose of going and doing. And in the absence of that, you either cling to these hormonal emotional feelings that don't satisfy, or you cling to the listlessness and depression that often results in suicide. Nothing matters anyway. Why do I belong here? And it's one of the things that Charlie Kirk fought against, was either of the two, just endless hedonism or nothing matters, fade away into the distance. And it's strange to see the ways that the young on the left are celebrating the violence, not only against Charlie Kirk, although that is someone with whom they held an enormous amount and continue to hold an enormous amount of vitriol. And to anyone we talked about before the show, anyone who holds those opinions and beliefs, he was just doing the work prominently and making movement in the country as a whole. And so that had to be stopped. But the way that they're celebrating this, and producer Nick has sent me a couple of different compilations put together, and he's mercifully edited so that I don't have to see certain things over and over again. But the way they are celebrating these things, it's in a bitterness and an empty, raw, primal rage. I don't know how else to describe it. It's not like seeing your sports team win. It's not like getting some kind of a victory. There's nothing at all that is wholesome about it. There's not even the kind of youthful, and I think a lot of us can identify have a youthful pettiness with like doing better than your ex or something like that. There's something that is just truly inhuman at these responses, including from those on the left and on the youth who knew Charlie. Producer Nick was sharing a video beforehand of this guy, Hassan, who had done events with Charlie and they'd scheduled a debate. Now he's mocking Alex Jones for crying, saying that, it's conservatives who have a victimhood complex. I mean, that is I don't think I have the words to express the inhumanity that's on display. Mm. And it leaves me breathless, Wade. I mean, and again, you have to focus on the youth because it's where everything's going, right? It's not as though they're just suddenly going to hit 25, 26, and then presto, poof, they're going to find Travis Kelce and they're going to get married and have lots of kids and it's all going to be wonderful, though some have foolishly tried to pretend that's the way it is. These people are man children into their 20s and 30s now.
Hmm. Yeah, what's striking also is we've heard for a long time, hey, the left is not really compassionate. They paint themselves as being that way, but what's underneath it is much uglier. But these are the same people who are, again, calling for empathy for the people who are. I don't take moral lectures from these people, and I haven't for a long time. But I don't think that anybody is anymore. And mocking Alex Jones when his friend died for crying when his friend died. It's not there. He's not. This is a guy who's not in touch with what a lot of people would like to say is basic humanity. I understand why somebody would be sad when their friend died. But
the passage in Isaiah where it says, "Woe to them that call good evil and evil good." Yeah, I'm reminded of that specifically as you're talking about not just people who are mocking those for showing grief over the assassination of Charlie, but who are also lecturing and heaping scorn on those for showing empathy. People that are angry that the Yankees held a 30-second moment of silence. And again, it's the youth who are saying, you know what? And if you do feel bad, you're an evil person for feeling bad for Charlie and his family. I didn't mean to interrupt you. It leaves me with no further thought to jump to than the shock at that.
Right. And I think that there was what I admire in Charlie, looking back on the career that he had, is that he would still want to talk to those people and would be okay with dialoguing with those people. And those people are not okay with dialoguing with him. They are okay with cheering on his murder, and cheering on and again, heaping scorn, like you said, on anybody who might be sad that he was murdered. It's a real question as to whether, again, so as I look at the left in America, I think it's safe to say that at some level the left in America is responsible for this, and I think that the way in which the people who are okay with celebrating this or heaping scorn on people who are saddened by this, that those people only do that because they see some social benefit to it. They think that at some level they are going to be rewarded for saying this particular thing. Maybe they really believe it, but there are people who hold their beliefs back for lots of reasons, for social reasons. There are people who would be too scared to say, "Oh, I support this" or "I support that." But the social pressure that they still feel is still in the direction of not just basic leftism, not just, again, have sympathy for moms who are underage pregnant or pregnant by a way that unintentional pregnant, all that kind of stuff. It's total removal from any real. It's not the vision of the American left that we were sold in the past. And so what I think is that we're in a time where Charlie was a big force in changing not just the political face of America, which he did in his labor toward the election of Trump, but also in changing the social reward system that these people had been holding to and acting in accordance with their entire lives.
Well said.
So the reason that these people are comfortable saying that Charlie Kirk deserved it, or that Trump did this, or Charlie Kirk brought it on himself, or there's some irony, or I can't help but find the irony in this, or whatever. The reason they're comfortable saying that is because they will get applause. There is still a large group in America who's okay saying that, and Charlie was in a big sense changing the face of that. His work is not complete. He didn't finish the job, but I think that as the political face of America changes, the social face of America needs to continue to push in the direction where that is unacceptable. And there are ways that can happen through political means, but there are also social forces that need to continue to push in that direction. I think that those problems are things that will be solved and can be solved if we recognize that that's what's going on. It is not just we're not just looking for a political reawakening in America, but a cultural, spiritual, and social reawakening.
And that's really where my thoughts have kind of ended in this line of thinking, because the question that I've been asked, and even personally, those who've reached out have said, well, what comes next? First of all, it is a very scary thing to receive that question as much as it has been asked in the last couple of days. That is something that should not be asked at the volume it has been asked in this country. And it truly shows how far we have fallen apart as a society, and spiritually, very aptly put, Wade, in a manner when we ask, well, what comes next? What is tomorrow? When in past, our nation recognized, we do in fact trust in he who holds tomorrow. And as a nation, we understood that there were certain duties and responsibilities that would carry certain things through. Now, when I look at a society that is searching for meaning, it's searching for applied duties, responsibilities, and purpose. I'm encouraged, like you said, and I agree, by the fabric of the society that's changing, that is no longer amused, to put it in another recent example, by the old woman yelling at the father at the baseball game, at the Phillies game. The way the crowd reacted is different than how it might have reacted 10 years ago. There is a lot of that is going around, and I want to see the country continue to return to a place of, well, actually, I don't want to say return. There's a revival that's needed. But what do you think is the best way to encourage that forward? That's the real thing, because it's one thing to say, well, I don't know where we're going. Here's where we could be going. How do you encourage people that you're talking to to move in the direction away from wanton, immoral chaos?
It's a great question. I think that the way that Charlie Kirk did this is admirable and should go forward. So I think I admire his spirit. The tragedy of America is that Charlie Kirk wasn't safe to do the nonviolent work. And in order for him to be safe to do the nonviolent work, there has to be a lot of barriers set up. And sadly, those are going to have to come first from political means. The fact, again, Charlie Kirk wasn't safe on a college campus discussing ideas in a public forum. And again, we talked, you mentioned earlier the North Carolina train stabbing. This person was not safe to just get on public transit at 10:30 p.m. after work and head home.
She who had just come from the war-torn Ukraine.
Right. And so in America, people are not safe. There's a kind of libertarian way of thinking that thinks that the government is the thing that is in the way of doing everything that's good. And there's a sense in which that's true. That's happened a lot during my lifetime. There are plenty of ways in which the government has stood in the way of good people trying to live normal lives. I think that Trump wants to get out of the way in doing that. And I think that the right generally is headed in that direction. I think I'm hopeful in that direction. What I think also needs to happen is a positive movement of the political forces to make sure that people can be safe to do that kind of work.
Yeah,
I'm saddened that Charlie Kirk needed security at all. He had a professional security team that followed him to every single event, and that followed him after the event, made sure that he got into the place that he needed to be. And there are still holes in that. Security is something that people just have to have. And I don't want peaceful and respectful Christian conservative public thinkers to have security at that level. And the only way that changes is if the left is at some level always on the back foot. I talked earlier about the conservative shame to be able to say normal stuff. That's been happening my entire adult life. I think that the shoe needs to go on the other foot. Socially, leftism needs to be a shameful thing to hold, a thing that cannot be mentioned in polite company that you think that. That's not that's not a totalitarian impulse. What that is trying to preserve America.
No, and I'm gonna reinforce that right now. It's not an insane thing to suggest that someone should feel shame for thinking that men in lingerie should hold children on their lap reading them books. It's not a shameful thing to suggest that those who believe segregationist nonsense should be shunned. I'm sorry, I don't. Again, you reach this point, right, where a lot of America is saying, "Look, I'm not even sorry anymore. You're ridiculous. You should feel bad for being this kind of a person." And that's honestly, in this moment, a very small beacon of hope that I do have through this entire situation, that there are people, including on the traditionally Democrat side of the aisle, who are heaping a lot of scorn, at least for now, on those youths on the left and some of their older, bitter, sadder cat lady friends who are saying the kinds of awful things that we've come to expect from a generation that has been allowed to simply say that with moral authority for too long.
And I think it starts. I think it can go from both directions, but I think it starts with an official response from the Trump administration.
I agree.
As far as org chart goes, I don't love the idea of the federal government getting involved in all of these things, reaching in. I have an impulse against that. But
I don't want to see the FBI like in every state doing anti-special work, like that kind of it matters how it's done. Kind of a thing.
Yeah, and I think part of it is just I recognize also that I don't live in an ideal society. So ideally, the FBI and ideally the federal government would be able to pull back. But I think we're in a time, sadly, that the federal government will have to be the only people who are taking care of these problems like this. We talked about judges when the stabbing happened in North Carolina. We talked about the total corruption of the judge system going on there. I think that has to be addressed in a way that is not left to the states and local districts, because the left has taken over all of those.
The idea of federal government is that state and local governments would be free underneath it to do what they can, because the idea was that lower government would always be the most stable because it would derive from the common stock of mankind who had the most common sense, who would immediately feel the repercussions of any local actions that they locally voted for with limited local resources. But that hasn't happened. You have these local governments that are now being held up as sacred cows when you have, again, 14 times that fool was released. I agree with you wholeheartedly.
Yeah, and there are people, so our system at every level has been taken over by the same kind of force that approves of, or at least closes their eyes to, the murderer in North Carolina and the assassin of Charlie Kirk. That is the system that has taken over, that has gotten its roots into every piece of the local government in most of the country.
You can also compare the local government at hand in Utah to the local government in Minneapolis. The police chief and the mayor who immediately wanted to run out and say, well, like it's a Tootsie Pop commercial, the world may never know, as though they somehow think they're being grand. And then you have Governor Cox in Utah who said, here's the evidence, here's everything that we know. This is clearly a political assassination, already information on what's been written on cartridges and a weapon that's been wrapped up, found in the woods, those kind of things. The level of transparency already, and calling a spade is something that is far more trustworthy in institutions than the kind of local government garbage from Minneapolis officials.
Right. And Cox also said, by the way, we do still have the death penalty in Utah, which is, not just talking about we're going to take care of this, but we are going to make this a public problem.
God, I hope they hang him. I don't want an injection. I hope they hang him.
Yeah, I think that there's the publicness of the crime. Again, what I was talking about with the official response, I think that people need, I don't think that, I hope that the people in charge recognize the feeling that's going on the ground, and that they need to be visibly taking care of this stuff. And if they don't, there will be lots of unofficial responses that nobody wants. There's a reason that there was a huge spate of vigilante justice movies in the 70s. The end of the Carter administration, there was this, and like in this post-civil rights world, end of the Carter administration, Vietnam, total lack of trust in institutions, and just believing, okay, well, I guess street crime is just part of my life now. And then you have a fictional character, you have Clint Eastwood walking around the streets and being okay with just, hey, I'm real broken up about that guy's rights. There's a reason that happens, and we don't have to like that. We don't have to like that Dirty Harry was a huge successful movie, spawned 4 others, but there's a reason also that we've had our own spate of vigilante justice movies. I'm thinking of The Equalizer, John Wick. I'm thinking of every Jason Statham movie. It's recognizing that people don't see that the guys in charge are taking care of real problems. And the only way to hold that down, to moderate that in any way, is for an official response to come down quickly. Quickly is a big deal here. And publicly.
The longer that the assassin remains at large, you already see the lionizing of this individual in a manner like Luigi Mangione. I'm sorry, Luigi Mangione should have been hanged months ago. He should have been hanged months ago. This man, when he's caught, needs to be tried and executed in a matter of weeks. This should not be some American bureaucratic lawyer show trial, 6, 7, 8 months, where he gets to write a book while he's in prison about, here's why I killed. No. And by the way, from my perspective, if you want to actually punch a little bit to the institutions of the United States, the insurance and lawyer bureaucracy that has been allowed to simply persist and stretch everything out to prevent justice from occurring is in fact a form of usury that, while normally painted at the Jews, which is ridiculous because that's That's like saying, man, I really wonder how physics works, and then setting a crayon on fire and going, okay, I figured it all out. But in the real case, understanding that the natural corruption of institutions comes from believing the status quo is sacrosanct. And that in a system like this, in which, a major legal battle and then all of these other nonsense for eternity would only embolden future chaos, destruction, and violence. Sorry, I know that sounded kind of bouncing off a couple of things, but it, alas.
No, not at all. I think that we all remember what it was like to watch the Kyle Rittenhouse trials, or at least to see clips after the fact. But we as conservatives, right wingers, people who thought that people should at least be able to own guns and be able to defend themselves, and we didn't lionize the sort of the BLM pedophiles who he defended himself against. We who are watching that were on pins and needles, and that is the tragedy. That's the kind of tragedy.
Same with the Daniel Penny trial.
Absolutely, the Daniel Penny thing, and also the going back further, the George Floyd, the officer,
Derek Chauvin.
Derek Chauvin. So the Derek Chauvin trial, and that didn't go the right way. And in my opinion, I won't. So with all of that, us being on pins and needles is the problem. And if somebody can solve that problem, even if it's in a way that I, in theory, in my political science class would say, oh, that seems like overreach. If somebody can solve that problem, then he will solve 100 other problems, 1,000 other problems that will creep up because of that delay. If justice isn't served quickly, then people will seek their own vengeance. It's a a regime that does execute justice quickly, publicly, in a way that people can understand and see the consequences of their actions is illegitimate.
Yes.
And my prayer is that, again, Donald Trump understands this, that JD Vance understands this, that everybody in whatever war room is talking about what needs to happen next understands this, and that Governor Cox does in Utah, that all of these people understand we need an official response that makes people know that we take this seriously. We're not going, and they don't have to take matters into their own hands. People don't want to take matters into their own hands.
Correct.
People want things to be taken care of by the people whose job it is to take care of them. And that's my hope. That's my prayer, is that the people whose job it is to take care of them will do it. And if they don't, that somebody else will in an official way, so that we can avoid all this other garbage that none of us want.
There are additional thoughts that are popping into my head as the kind of the analysis and pattern recognition side starts to wake up, to be frank. But I'm going to have to pin those because it's not quite the time. So we'll definitely have you back on to chat about these things. We've gone on a good little bit longer than I'd expected, but very good stuff. Wade, always appreciate it. Wade Show with Wade Stotts. You're welcome back anytime, man.
Thank you, Tony.
All right, real quick here before we finish up, I do want to talk about a few positive things. We've gotten a couple of messages even during the show where some have asked quite accurately if there are anything particularly that I do believe, if there is anything particularly that I think is positive coming out of this. So while there are a lot of people who are online saying really horrible things, an individual who I would suggest is a good representation of a lot of young men in the country. Joe Rogan, who, of course, hosts the most popular podcast that's out there. He was on with Charlie Sheen, of all individuals. For all of those over on the left who don't understand how many people do, in fact, see political assassinations, especially like an individual like Charlie Kirk's, as inherently evil, the proper way that one responds is a lot like how Joe Rogan and Charlie Sheen responded. Here you go.
So this just happened. We just found out that Charlie Kirk got shot.
It's fucking awful.
And is he dead?
No, I don't think so.
That's what was just...
One of the guys out there just said it was confirmed that he's dead.
In the lobby was just...
I've been looking. I haven't seen anything that said confirmed.
Whoa.
Murder for having a different opinion from somebody else.
Yeah.
Different ideology from somebody else.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know.
Beliefs that didn't align.
Yeah.
I'm sorry?
Dead?
Yeah.
Rest in peace.
We're in
Fuck.
Fox News.
Jesus. 27 years old, maybe?
Do they even have a
31? And yeah, I mean, that is in fact an appropriate way to respond. There's a couple other things that I have saved from today. First of all, I think we have a shooting update from the Annapolis situation. It appears that this situation began with a threat made to the school of an active shooter linked to fake threats. We're kind of keeping track of the situation. During initial reports, this doesn't make a whole lot of sense. I'll read what's written here. It's from an open intelligence source. To wrap up what happened tonight at the U.S. Naval Academy, it appears this began with a threat made to the school of an active shooter linked to fake threats to various schools across the country over the past few weeks, leaving the academy to be placed on lockdown, and several midshipmen and others to think the shooter was a different midshipman who had come for revenge after recently being kicked out of the Naval Academy. During the initial reports, students and staff were claiming the shooter, believed to be the midshipman mentioned earlier, was dressed as a police officer. So when police knocked on the door of one of the midshipmen as part of clearing the campus following the initial threat, he attacked and was subsequently shot. This appears to be the story as of now. I'll post updates as they come out. This is a mess. There's conflicting information coming out of this right now. Again, we're only able to cite sources that are bringing updates. There's conflicting reports, even the Associated Press and Fox, as well as CNN and Reuters are all reporting different stories. We will, at this point, I'm making the decision, although there's a few other minutes in the show, we will table the rest of any coverage regarding Annapolis right now. We pray for those at the Naval Academy. I know a lot of really great guys at the Naval Academy, and we'll, of course, be in prayer for them. And when we have information that we can confirm, we will share further updates. Regarding the good things and the good responses, actual positive things in the aftermath following the terrible assassination of my friend Charlie Kirk, Allie Beth Stuckey over at The Blaze, also a good friend, made a very pertinent theological point, I believe, about how seriously Charlie took his faith. And it is a clip that I think is very worth being played on air. I do. I think it's very important.
If Charlie had had the choice, if someone had been able to come to him and say, okay, this is what your death will accomplish. It will accomplish more people hearing the gospel. It will accomplish more people waking up. I know that if Charlie had had that choice, he would have said yes. He would have said, yes, Lord, send me. And not only would he have, but he did. He went into the lion's den, and now he is with the Lion of Judah. Now he is with Jesus, and everyone is going to know who he was and why he lived and the gospel that motivated him. And that is the only thing right now that is giving me any hope or any peace or any comfort.
She's correct. She is absolutely, wholly, and completely correct. Ben Shapiro, also guy who I have a lot of admiration for. He wrote a phenomenal article on the life and accomplishments and the character of Charlie Kirk. I highly recommend that you read it. In my latest article on the Daily Signal, I actually link 3 articles that I think are excellent on Charlie, one from Bradley Devlin, one from Ben Shapiro, and one from Jack Posobiec. Those are all linked in the very top of the article. Ben Shapiro announced that after there were some rumors posted in various outlets that he was canceling any college tour in the future for matters of safety, Ben made it very clear, as I suspected from the beginning, that he would be doing a tour anyway, absolutely. And actually, I think probably one of the best statements. Here's Ben.
Now, it's still up to us. I saw a lot of rumors online today. I was made aware of this by my team that I canceled some sort of college tour. That's bullshit. I saw those rumors. They are false. I will be coming to college campuses, many of them this year. So will we all, I am sure, because we're Americans and we're not going to be deterred. Charlie's voice is not silent. we're going to pick up that bloodstained microphone where Charlie left it. And to those who would intimidate, who would seek to stop us, who would seek to end free discussion, who believe that they have ownership over public spaces and can violently threaten and kill people who speak freely, we are not going to stop. And I have 2 words. You. We will not stop telling the truth. We will never stop telling the truth. We will never stop debating and discussing. We will never stop standing up for what America is and for what she should be. And we will never let Charlie Kirk's voice die. Goodbye to my friend, Charlie Kirk. May your memory be a blessing for your family and for your country and for all of us.
Correct. Again, correct. From the left as well, by the way, we did mention 2 streamers over on the left who were particularly egregious. One young Democrat, kind of a Harry Sisson adjacent guy. His name is Dean Withers. He, while finding out about the death of Charlie Kirk at the hands of the assassin, his response is a correct and human response.
His wife and children were in attendance, dude. Imagine, you know, imagine being a 12-year-old, you know, watching your dad. Nobody deserves that.
Correct. That's an appropriate response. And by the way, may I make the case that when you compare the attitude shown by Dean with the attitude shown by Destiny, there is something to offer those on the left side of the aisle that is not purposeless, depressive death. So a thank you to Dean Withers. Also, The View, the ladies on The View.
I hope it doesn't have a chilling effect, whether you're left or right, on your ability to speak your mind. I know the one thing we all agree about on this table, we all share our viewpoints, and we should be able to do that without fear.
Well, that's our bread and butter here. So, of course, it's very important. I agree with everything you're saying.
Well, and also, although we don't all align with his views, what I deeply aligned with was he said, when we stop talking, that's when things get bad. The irony of a man who would go across the country to college campuses, that's the pinnacle of thought differences. It's where you're supposed to have conversations, would go, and his series was called Prove Me Wrong. He would talk to people openly who disagreed. It's what we try to exemplify every day and say, this is what we need more of. So the irony of being violently killed while saying those words of what we need more of in this country, I know all of us agree on that part, as there's never a place for political violence.
In that instance, that is a very appropriate sentence. That is a very appropriate statement to make. Last but not least, I did receive a video during the show that Vice President J.D. Vance canceled all of the plans that he had upon hearing of the death of Charlie at the hands of the assassin, and went to go help load Charlie's casket onto Air Force 2 today. This is posted by Sebastian Gorka. I wanted to share this clip as well. We really appreciate you guys joining the show this evening. We apologize for the confusion kind of at the beginning with the breaking news updates on Orthodox. We will see you back here real soon. This is the Tony Kinnett Cast here on the Daily Signal, nationally syndicated and first on 93 WIBC. Take care.